You are listening to 106.7, Wilmington's Big Talker, and my name is Paul Vallone. I'd like to welcome you to Guns, Politics, and Freedom, where each Saturday at 1 p.m. and Sunday at 5 p.m. we give you the ammunition to better defend your gun rights. I'd also like to thank our sponsor, Hyatt Guns, America's largest gun shop. Check them out at hyattguns.com. In case you aren't familiar with me, I direct Grassroots North Carolina, or GRNC, since 1994, our state's most effective gun rights organization. As its director, I was involved in drafting and passing our original concealed handgun law. Since then, GRNC has gone on to engineer passage of concealed handgun reciprocity, our purchase permit bypass, Castle Doctrine and Stand Your Ground, the expansion of concealed carry into state and municipal parks, restaurants, public assemblies, educational properties, and much more. Grassroots North Carolina is exactly what the name implies, a grassroots collection of volunteers from all walks of life who share a common concern that our constitutionally guaranteed freedoms are being eroded. Check us out at grnc.org. That's grnc.org. Welcome to Day 75 of the leftist insurrection in America, an insurrection which was pre-planned by Marxists at Black Lives Matter, Antifa, and elsewhere who were waiting for the right trigger event, which was, in this case, the death of George Floyd. While rioting in most cities is now at just a low simmer, leftists in Portland, Oregon continue to attack targets of opportunity, most recently a police precinct. Because contrary to predictions by the media and the Democrat governor of Oregon, reduced federal presence around the federal courthouse by the Department of Homeland Security, which was protecting the courthouse and doing Portland's job, their low profile has not stopped violence. The summer of love continues. Meanwhile, the Wall Street Journal reports double-digit increases in homicide in 36 of our 50 largest cities, as leftist city councils have either slashed police budgets or are planning to in at least 19 U.S. cities, including Minneapolis, Baltimore, New York, Portland, Philadelphia, and potentially San Francisco, San Diego, Los Angeles, Oakland, a lot of those are in California, Milwaukee, Denver, Chicago, New York City, and Washington, D.C., plus North Carolina's own little bastions of leftism, Durham and Winston-Salem. The silver lining to this, if such is possible, is that people around the nation who never previously contemplated gun ownership have finally figured out that the police can't or won't protect them, and they are buying guns at record rates. According to AmmoLand.com, Small Arms Analytics and Forecasting estimates the July 2020 U.S. firearms sales at 2.0 million units, a year-over-year increase of 134.6% from July of 2019. Moreover, a huge proportion of the gun purchases are reportedly from new gun buyers. Data from the National Shooting Sports Foundation has found that at least 40% of their sales have come from first-time buyers, as opposed to typically 25%. Now, what impact so many people becoming familiar with the gun culture remains to be seen. Some will doubtless adopt the guns for me but not for thee hypocrisy, but some might also start looking critically at gun control proposals and the politicians who make them, particularly after they see, in contrast to what the media has been telling them, how hard it is to actually purchase a firearm. One thing that should motivate all gun owners in the 2020 elections is the Democrat-led attempts to dissolve the NRA. New York State Attorney General Letitia James filed a lawsuit this week on August 6 to dissolve the NRA, claiming that Executive Vice President Wayne LaPierre, former Treasurer and Chief Financial Officer Wilson Woody Phillips, former Chief of Staff and Executive Director of General Operations Joshua Powell, and Corporate Secretary and General Counsel John Fraser have been siphoning funds from the organization. Predictably, James claims her actions are not politically based, despite the fact that she ran for office by saying she would destroy the NRA and that she filed the suit less than 2 weeks after the NRA endorsed the re-election of President Donald Trump. On the lawsuit, James reportedly said, and I quote, "The NRA's influence has been so powerful that the organization went unchecked for decades while top executives funneled millions into their own pockets. The NRA is fraught with fraud and abuse, which is why today we seek to dissolve the NRA because no organization is above the law." They always say that. In what was undoubtedly a coordinated attack, District of Columbia Attorney General Carl A. Racine simultaneously filed yet another suit against the NRA. Fox News quoted NRA President Carolyn Meadows as saying, and I quote, "You could have set your watch by it. The investigation was going to reach a crescendo as we move into the 2020 election cycle. It's a transparent attempt to score political points and attack the leading voice in opposition to the leftist agenda." That much is true. "This has been a power grab by a political opportunist, a desperate move that is part of a rank political vendetta." I agree with some of that, but not the desperation part. "Our members won't be intimidated or bullied in their defense of political and constitutional freedom." The NRA countersued James and the state of New York, seeking a court declaration that they are following state not-for-profit law and alleging that the New York Attorney General is targeting the organization for its political positions, violating its free speech rights. Now, many have discussed the financial troubles of the NRA, which were highlighted beginning last year and reportedly stem from significant financial abuses of the organization by its upper-level leadership. But the attempt to exploit the problems by anti-gun Democrats represents nothing less than a new front in their war to end private gun ownership. In the second and third segment of today's show, we will have as our guest resident expert on the inner workings of the NRA, Jeff Knox, Executive Director of the Firearms Coalition. Jeff is the son of the legendary Neil Knox. Now, I'm dating myself here, but back in the 90s, when I became involved in the gun rights movement, Neil was one of my early mentors who became a close friend. Although Neil died in 2005, you may still remember that together with Harlan Carter, Neil Knox was instrumental in turning the NRA into the political juggernaut it was, at least until Thursday. Anyways, this just in gun rights news. This week, my organization, Grassroots North Carolina, filed yet another lawsuit against Wake County Sheriff Gerald Baker and Wake County over Baker's refusal to issue pistol purchase permits within the 14-day period required by state law. In recent weeks, GRNC's office has been flooded with complaints from people who want to buy handguns for protection against riots spreading across the country, but are unable to do so because Sheriff Gerald Baker refuses to process pistol purchase permits within the 14 days required by law, effectively denying citizens their right to keep and bear arms. In response to GRNC's notice of noncompliance, sent to Baker's counsel on July 15th, his attorney, Nick Ellis, claimed that Baker was doing a, quote, excellent job of processing pistol purchase permit applications, despite the fact that Baker is clearly violating GS 14-404F. The statute requires sheriffs to issue or deny purchase permits in 14 days, further stipulating that applications may only be denied for statutorily permissible reasons. Presently, applications are taking as long as 2 months. Or that Baker is trying to circumvent state law by arguing that the requisite 14-day issuing period doesn't start until his office decides to allow a citizen to come in to finish the application which was begun online, effectively claiming the power to deny citizens' rights indefinitely. Or that North Carolinians are being denied their rights. It's unlawful for citizens to buy handguns without either a pistol purchase permit or a concealed handgun permit, meaning that Baker's actions are denying citizens not only their right to keep and bear arms, but to protect their families at a time of national crisis. Reports are that the Wake County Sheriff is non-responsive. Email queries go unanswered. Phone calls go unanswered. Reports suggest that Baker has limited the number of hours which the Wake County Sheriff's employees can process applications. Baker may be thumbing his nose at the law. He's under a consent decree from prior litigation requiring him to issue handgun permits, yet he appears to be dragging his feet in order to issue the minimum possible number of permits. Now, we realize that other counties are also experiencing delays, notably Guilford and Mecklenburg counties, two other counties which also elected left-leaning sheriffs in 2018. We hope that by getting the most egregious offender into line, other sheriffs will follow. More as it develops. Right now, you're listening to Guns, Politics, and Freedom on Wilmington's Big Talker. After our break, we will return with our guest, Jeff Knox of the Firearms Coalition, and his analysis of what may befall the NRA. My name is Paul Vallone. You are listening to Guns, Politics, and Freedom today on Wilmington's Big Talker, 106.7, WilmingtonBigTalker.com. Our show is sponsored by Hyatt Guns, America's largest gun shop. Check them out at HyattGuns.com. Our guest today is Jeff Knox, the Executive Director of the Firearms Coalition. Jeff is the son of the legendary Neil Knox. Now, I'm dating myself here, but back in the 1990s, when I began to become involved in the gun rights movement, Neil was an early mentor who became a close friend of mine. Although Neil died in 2005, some of you may still remember that together with Harlan Carter, Neil Knox was instrumental in turning the NRA into the political juggernaut it is today, and hopefully will stay. Jeff continues this tradition today and has made a mission of reforming the NRA, he is our resident expert on all things the inner workings of the NRA. Welcome, Jeff.
Hey, Paul, how are you doing? It's good to be with you.
Thank you very much for joining us. So, the state of New York, the Attorney General Letitia James has filed suit against the NRA with the intention of dissolving the organization, which, as everyone knows, would be a huge blow for gun rights. Why don't you give us a short and dirty version of exactly what the problem is at the NRA, which made the organization vulnerable to what is a nakedly political attempt to curtail gun ownership?
Well, that's easier said than done, but it comes down to, as someone I respect very much just emailed me today, graft, nepotism, and bribery. Over the last 20 years, the top leadership of the NRA has been slowly accumulating more and more power and more money, and buying themselves whatever they want. And it's atrocious. And you couched it in excellent terms that this is absolutely a political assault on the NRA. But the only reason that this political assault is available, the only reason there's an opening, a breach in the walls of the castle, is because Wayne LaPierre and his cronies at the top of NRA have been utterly corrupt, just utterly corrupt. They have been not only paying themselves exorbitant salaries, but then also dipping in and overcharging expense accounts and backdoor expense accounts and hiring their pals and their friends and potentially their mistresses, mistress spy. Anyway, it's ridiculous. It's just utterly ridiculous. And then you have the NRA board of directors doing absolutely nothing to correct the problems or straighten. I wrote an article over a year ago, and I said that the NRA board of directors had two choices. At that time, an expose had come out by a Bloomberg-paid investigative reporter had been doing digging. He was assigned the mission.
This was the New Yorker piece last year, right?
Right, absolutely. Guy named Mike Spice, who is actually an excellent reporter, and he was tasked by Bloomberg to go find dirt on the NRA. And he went out and he found dirt, and he found piles and piles of dirt, and he published it it's had been slowly kind of trickling out, and then he did a big dump in the New Yorker expose, and it was astounding, the stuff that he had found of cronyism and corruption and nepotism and malfeasance, misfeasance, misappropriation of funds, self-dealing. It's outrageous. And so I wrote that the board of directors had two choices. They could either get rid of Wayne LaPierre, open up their books, stand naked before the powers that be and say, towards correcting all of our problems, and here's all the evidence you need. Do whatever you need to do, but preserve our organization. Mm-hmm. Or they could circle the wagons around Wayne LaPierre and continue circling all the way down the drain. And they chose the second option, and that's what we've seen for the last year and a half, and that's what we're apparently seeing now, because they're still controlling what the board sees and what the board and the board is, so far as I know, not doing a damn thing to address these problems. Well, the New York filed this suit against NRA. NRA already had in the can a suit against New York as a countersuit, and I've spoken to several attorneys. They say that that's an absolute loser, that it's not going to go anywhere. And I've also found that a copy of their countersuit to all of the board members, but they never sent a copy of the original suit from New York to the board of directors. So,
well, I've been saying for many years, back when, even when your father was fighting this battle, that I guess the inherent flaw with the NRA has always been that while most nonprofit organizations, or at most nonprofits, the board of directors runs the executives. In this case, the executives run the board of directors. They pick people, and have picked people for many years, deliberately to be compliant. They pick big names who don't necessarily have a lot of knowledge of the gun rights movement. Would you agree?
Oh, absolutely. That's one of the things. They get rubber stamp directors. There is a handful of the core long-term Marion Hammer type directors who are very loyal to Wayne and have again lined their pockets to one degree or another in all of this chicanery. Mm-hmm. I mean, Marion is an example. I appreciate the things that Marion has done over the years for the gun rights movement. Mm-hmm. I absolutely do. Dad was instrumental in elevating Marion back in 1978. Right. But she's been receiving between $120,000 and $270,000 a year from NRA, and sliding that around on the books in sort of shady ways, and she's been the number one defender of Wayne LaPierre, as he's been pulling down over $1 million a year, and at times $3 million.
Yeah, I was going to say, wasn't it $5 million 1 year with bonuses?
Well, it was almost $5. He got a $3 million dump out of the retirement fund. He and Woody, the treasurer, and Chris Cox all got these big dumps out of the executive retirement fund right before they locked up the executive retirement fund for not having money. It's just the chicanery goes deeper and deeper. It's ridiculous. It really is. And people who don't think that Aisha James has the power or the authority to do what she's doing, they're absolutely, utterly wrong. The NRA is chartered in New York. It has to follow New York laws. It is under the auspices of the Attorney General of New York and the Board of Charities and under Governor Cuomo.
Okay.
And they're suing Governor Cuomo at this time, and it's so you've got just all kinds of political mess.
Well, I got to ask this now. New York. Okay, I personally am a refugee from New York long ago. All right. And,
Bless your heart.
Yeah. Well, that was 30. What was it? 35 years ago. So and I didn't try to make like North Carolina like where I came from. Thank you very much. But the bottom line is, why would anybody stay chartered in the state of New York, the People's Republic of New York? Is there any solid reason for that you're aware of?
No, we raised the issue years ago, decades ago. As a matter of fact, Professor Joe Olson of Hamline University was one of the members of the board of directors that sided with Dad during the good old days, and Joe brought it up that, gosh, why are we staying? And it's this. The only answer that anybody ever gave. There were two answers that I'm aware of that anybody ever gave. One was history, that we've always been chartered in New York, and
we've always done it that way.
Right. The other was that we used to have an attorney named Schulman, and that attorney was based in New York and was knowledgeable about New York law, not-for-profit law.
Okay.
And
Jeff, I'm going to have to continue this in the next segment. We're running up against a hard stop here. Folks, we will be back in just a moment with Jeff Knox of the Firearms Coalition. Right now, you are listening to Guns, Politics, and Freedom. We're going to take a short break, after which we will return with still more information enabling you to better defend your gun rights. My name is Paul Vallone. You are listening to Guns, Politics, and Freedom today on Wilmington's Big Talker, 106.7, WilmingtonBigTalker.com. Our show is sponsored by Hyatt Guns, America's largest gun shop. Check them out at HyattGuns.com. Our guest today is Jeff Knox, the Executive Director of the Firearms Coalition, our resident expert on the inner workings of the NRA, and we are discussing the recent lawsuit by the Attorney General of the state of New York to dissolve the NRA. Now, Jeff, what are the odds of New York succeeding in ending the NRA, and what happens if they fall a little bit short of their complete objective?
Well, regardless of anything else, this is going to cost the NRA a whole bunch more money. And Wayne LaPierre himself said that it's already cost us between $80 and $100 million. That's in hard costs and lost revenue. $100 million. And that was, a year ago that he said that? Almost a year ago. We've been paying an attorney on average $2 million a month. The last time I was able to get a report on that a while back, too. One attorney's office, we've been paying him $2 million per month to defend Wayne LaPierre from what's been going on. They've set the NRA board, the annual members meeting. They've canceled it and moved it and canceled it. It's still on their website. Says it's going to be September 5th in Springfield, Missouri, and it's not. They canceled that already.
Oh my!
I believe that probably Letitia James and the state of New York are going to, this is going to go into a court they've handpicked. I believe that the odds are extremely good that they will, at a minimum, hire all of the officers and all of the current directors. Well, I think that they will do that. And then the question is, where does it go from there? The chair is saying that they want to file all kinds of fines and fees and whatever, and take away, as NRA in fines and fees and penalties as they possibly can, possibly up to and including the entirety of the NRA assets.
Oh my.
So it could be terrible. The things that I am encouraging, I'm encouraging members of the board of directors who are untainted and can prove that they're untainted to get together and file a petition or to remain in control of the organization and its assets. I'm also encouraging the presidents of the various associations to get together and create an association of state-affiliated associations and them to petition the court to, if NRA's assets are taken from the current leadership, put them into our hands because we are the natural heirs to that money, that knowledge, that everything. I mean, the mailing list, the membership list of NRA is probably the most critical asset, and that go to Mike Bloomberg or Mario Cuomo or whichever, Andrew Cuomo. It needs to go to, at a minimum, all 50 of, or however many there are, state affiliate associations of the NRA. It needs to come back to the
I hate to say
those are the two errors that I think are there.
I hate to say it, but just the fact that the membership list becomes vulnerable is going to drive people away. I mean, we maintain a very tight control of our membership list at Grassroots North Carolina, precisely because, by and large, gun owners tend to be a pretty private lot. They don't want their private information given out. So that in itself is scary stuff. Oh,
absolutely. We're incredibly careful with our list at the Firearms Coalition, and have been for 35 years that we've been doing this. We don't let anybody have our list or know our list or use our list or anything. It's that's a sacred trust, and it is that Letitia James could put it in her back pocket, and not just current members, but people who have been members over the last 20 years and prospective members, because NRA is always out there buying lists for their groups. So it's it's a scary situation, and I don't see a whole lot. The reports that I'm getting are that the leadership, I'm putting quotes around that, Wayne LaPierre and company are still treating the board of directors like mushrooms, keeping them in the dark and feeding them BS, and I haven't heard anything solid come from the board of directors, but then again, they don't talk to me a whole lot these days. I'm dangerous to them. I'm radioactive.
You're the enemy. You're the enemy.
That's
just
right.
I've been denounced in board meetings in Fairfax several times, and some of which your father described to me, as a matter of fact. So, the NRA board of directors has been very good at circling the wagons. Unfortunately, they've circled them into a circular firing squad.
Yep, absolutely. A few years ago, Marion Hammer declared me and Adam Kraut to be the as we were trying to get Adam elected to the board of directors as a young, aggressive attorney. A great addition to the NRA board, but no, he was the enemy within. It's atrocious. It's terrible. It's sad. This is an organization committed countless hours and energy to over the years, and it truly is at risk of being dissolved, of going away forever. And there's no way that we're coming out of this lawsuit from New York with a stronger, better NRA without years of work going back in to build it back up to a stronger, better NRA. The NRA is going to play virtually no role in the 2020 elections. That's what this is timed for. That's what it's intended for, and it's going to work. The NRA is going to play virtually no role in the 2020 elections, and what I have always said is if you've got a couple of bucks in your pocket and you want to gun rights, then send it to your local grassroots organization first. Yeah. Then look at national organizations above that, and keep the Firearms Coalition in the list, and keep us out there writing about this, informed about it. But
now I'm gonna have to
North Carolina going.
There we go. I was going to put a plug in for us. You heard it from Jeff. Grassroots North Carolina, grnc.org. Join the organization. Anyways, so what do we do? I mean, what can we do to mitigate the consequences of this?
Well, as I say, as members, there's little that we can do except express our desire to the board of directors. If you look in your magazine, there's a section of your magazine that's called the Official Journal. And in the Official Journal, at the bottom of a page, there's a list of NRA directors. It doesn't give addresses, but it does give their names and their states. And you can work from there to try and contact these guys. I've been working for years to try and get a better communication system. And there are ways, and you can look at some of my old articles on ammoland.com about communicating with the NRA, but let them know that you're tired of this nonsense and that they need to make a change. We've got an annual meeting coming up sometime that they have to do this according to the bylaws before the end of November. It's inexcusable that they've kicked it back twice already. They're blaming COVID, but they only need a quorum of 100 people 100 voters in order to be able to hold the meeting. So, right. So it's just excuses. They're just hiding from us. Let them know. I would personally advise not to send a dime of money to the NRA right now. They're going to tell us that if you don't send money right now to help stop this attack and loss, it could be the end of the NRA. And yes, it could be, but your money is not going to help because all it's doing is circling the wagons around Wayne. And that's not what you want your money to do. You want your money to go to protecting the NRA. And the only way to protect the NRA is to fire these scumbags and get them out of the NRA, and then we can work on protecting the association, because it's the National Wayne Association right now, and that's not what it's supposed to be.
Got it. All right, Jeff, we are running out of time. I wish that was better news, but thank you very much for bringing us up to speed. We appreciate you joining us today.
Thank you, Paul.
Folks, you are listening to Guns, Politics, and Freedom. We're going to take a short break, after which we will return with more information enabling you to better defend your gun rights. My name is Paul Vallone. You are listening to Guns, Politics, and Freedom today on Wilmington's Big Talker. Our show is sponsored by Hyatt Guns, America's largest gun shop. Check them out at hyattguns.com. Folks, in the last segment, Jeff Knox of the Firearms Coalition noted that the NRA, by virtue of its present problems, will be combat ineffective in the 2020 elections. That means more of it is up to us. We must elect and defend pro-gun legislators against the $5 million campaign being conducted right now in North Carolina by billionaire and anti-gun zealot Michael Bloomberg. And the GRNC Political Victory Fund intends to do exactly that. We don't throw money at politicians. Instead, we do mailings, automated phone alerts, social media ads, emails, and radio spots, all directed toward helping gun owners defend their rights. In election years, GRNC Political Victory Fund holds politically incorrect raffles, in which we raffle off firearms, typically AR-15 variants, to raise money for our election effort. This year's effort is called the, wait for it, Michael Bloomberg Special. And this year, thanks to Hyatt Guns in Charlotte, we are raffling off a top-notch Rock River Arms LAR-15 Rage 3G rifle in 5.56 millimeter with forged lower receiver, chrome moly 16-inch 1-9 barrel, single-stage trigger, and 15-inch Rage 3G free-float M-LOK handguard. A lightweight carbine in the modern style, this weighs only 6.5 pounds. Buy lots of tickets, please. Not only can you win a choice AR-15, you will also help elect pro-gun candidates, and best of all, stick a thumb in the eye of Michael Bloomberg. To get tickets, go to grnc.org, where you will find a big picture of the rifle we are raffling off that you can click on to buy tickets. Again, that is grnc.org, grnc.org. If you didn't get that, grab a pen because I will repeat it at the end of the show. As a reminder of why the 2020 elections are more critical than any other in memory, let's take a peek at the Democrat platform, what the party philosophically wants to do and will do if they win the elections. This comes from page 43 of their own draft platform that Democrats plan to adopt at their national convention, and this, by the way, comes straight from the donkey's mouth. And what I will do after each item is to decode what they really mean when it's not expressed in newspeak. Here we go. Are you ready? Quote, Democrats will enact universal background checks. Universal background checks means universal gun registration. They want to use the National Instant Background Check System, or NICS, basically to create a registration system. Anybody who says that this is illegal and can't be done should know that in the Clinton administration it already has been, when Janet Reno retained the transaction records in violation of the Brady Law to effectively register guns. This was reversed only after George W. Bush was elected in 2000. They want to end online sales of guns and ammunition. There are no online sales of guns, of course, since any gun purchased online must be shipped to a dealer in the buyer's state of residence, and the dealer there does a NICS check, just like any other. What they really mean is to shut down the advertising of firearms online in order to choke lawful gun sales. Next, quote, close dangerous loopholes that currently allow stalkers and some individuals convicted of assault or battery to buy and possess firearms. This would expand crimes which permanently bar people from buying guns to include a variety of misdemeanors, since felony convictions already bar gun ownership. That means the little scuffle somebody had 20 years ago would now permanently bar them from buying guns. This, of course, creates as many classes of people as possible with permanent firearms disabilities, which, of course, has long been a goal of gun ban advocates. Next, quote, and adequately fund the federal background check system. Well, I'm not aware of anyone ever saying the FBI isn't sufficiently funded to administer the National Instant Background Check System, so God knows what nightmare they have in mind for us there. Next, we will close the Charleston loophole. The Charleston loophole came from Dylan Roof and his ability to buy a handgun despite having 1 month prior to that pleaded guilty to a drug charge because the FBI failed to find the charge. What they plan to do here is to ensure that if your background check doesn't go through within the requisite 3 days, you would not be allowed to buy a gun. Ignoring that 3 days is more than enough for a computerized background check, that 91% of those checks come back instantly, and that no gun dealer is obligated to sell the gun if the background check didn't come back in 3 days, what this really means is that if they can manage to shut down or otherwise hamstring the NICS system, they can shut down gun sales nationwide. Next, and prevent individuals who have been convicted of hate crimes from possessing firearms. Ah, hate crimes. Hate crimes, of course, are whatever they can make into a hate crime. In socialist Canada, for example, certain speech is a so-called hate crime that can get you 2 years in prison. Many times, anti-gun Democrats have attempted to ban gun ownership for simply exercising your First Amendment right to say whatever you want, however offensive it may be. This is just the latest attempt. Next, quote, Democrats will ban the manufacture and sale of assault weapons and high-capacity magazines. No great surprise that they want to ban semi-automatic firearms in standard capacity magazines, since they've been trying to do that for decades. Of course, now they will be banning millions and millions of firearms, and my money says that this time there would be no grandfathering of existing firearms as there was in the 1994 ban. But more than that, you will notice that they don't define what an assault weapon is, meaning the definition will be expanded to include things like pump-action or lever-action guns, just as they did in Australia. Next, quote, we will incentivize states to enact licensing requirements for owning firearms. Nothing, no surprise there. Now you got to have a license. So basically, it turns your right into a privilege. And red flag laws that allow courts to temporarily remove guns from the possession of those who are a danger to themselves or others. Again, no surprise. They want to confiscate guns on the potentially false allegations and unsubstantiated allegations of an ex-spouse or a jilted lover or even a coworker who doesn't like you in hearings that the accused might not even be aware of, much less get a chance to defend himself or herself in. Utterly unconstitutional, but of course that's never stopped them before. Next, quote, we will pass legislation requiring that guns be safely stored in homes. Here we have mandatory gun storage laws requiring you to store guns unloaded and separate from ammunition, making them useless for self-defense, and exposing you to prosecution if a gun is stolen from you and used in a crime. Next, quote, and Democrats believe that gun companies should be held responsible for their products just like any other business and will prioritize repealing the law that shields gun manufacturers from civil liability. This would be the repeal of the Protection of Lawful Commerce in Arms Act passed in 2005. The act prohibits lawsuits from being filed against manufacturers of guns that function as intended. It does not shield them from liability against defective products. If you're not an oldster like me, you might not remember that in the late 1990s, handgun control, which now reinvented itself to the Brady Center to Prevent Gun Violence, joined up with some mass tort lawyers who were suing tobacco companies, as well as some certain leftist-run cities. In this scheme, the lawyers came up with what they called novel legal theories, translated that means meritless legal theories, in which cities could gang up on gun manufacturers to force them out of business or to force them to, quote, voluntarily, end quote, adopt gun control measures that they had been unable to pass through legislation. You might not recall that Smith & Wesson, back when it was owned by a British company, Tompkins plc, was the first to knuckle under to this blackmail, accepting in its deal all sorts of things that make guns all but unusable. And that but for the election of George W. Bush in 2000, Smith & Wesson and other manufacturers would have had to enact these gun control measures. So when the Democrat platform talks about repealing the law that shields gun manufacturers from liability, what they really mean is they want a license to run all gun manufacturers out of business. These are the stated intentions of Democrats in the 2020 election. It's not theory, it's not conjecture, these are their own words. And rest assured, if they get control of the U.S. Senate and the presidency, or even if they just get the North Carolina General Assembly, you will eat not only the gun control I described, but anything else that they can pass in their acceleration of their intent to incrementally end private gun ownership. Oh, and by the way, if they do it in the General Assembly, you'll get 10 years of it because 2021 will be a redistricting year. Folks, GRNC Political Victory Fund is working to make sure that this doesn't happen. So I encourage you to buy a ticket in the Michael Bloomberg special, grnc.org. That's grnc.org. Next, you should motivate all your friends and like-minded acquaintances to vote and check your registration to make sure that you and they are properly registered. The bottom line, folks, is that on or before November 3rd, you need to vote like your rights depend on it, because they do. My name is Paul Vallone. You've been listening to Guns, Politics, and Freedom on Wilmington's Big Talker, where each Saturday at 1 p.m. and each Sunday at 5, we give you the ammunition to better defend your gun rights. Please check out our sponsor, Hyatt Guns, America's largest gun shop, at hyattguns.com. See you next week.